When you're attempting to change your entire life, the stakes are high. A unicorn property came to the market, the kind that ticked all the boxes, the kind that seemed almost too good to be true. Could we make it ours? Or would it prove to be out of our reach? Would this be the next step forward on our path to changing our lives in 1 year? Or would it end up being a step back? What happens when you get your heart set on somewhere that seems like the dream, but things don't exactly go to plan?
So there I was, trawling through this pretty random and super niche property website when I saw it. I stopped the scroll. It was the property of our dreams, a true unicorn property. What transpired next was less of a step towards our dream life and more of a roller coaster, so buckle up. But first, before we get stuck into the roller coaster ride, I think it's really important to give you a bit of context about this dream life. What is the dream and why this property is so pivotal in it? So let's do that now. What is the dream? The dream is this. We decided as a family to entirely change our lives over the course of a year. I've completely changed my life before, so I feel quite confident that I can do it again. I lived an entirely different life to the one that I'm living now. I am a different person. I understand how to do these things, and so I feel like we're going to pull it off. So this is what the dream is. Number one, we are going to take off on a year of travel as a family. So we've sold our house, we're converting our van, we're gearing everything up for a full-on year of digital nomad style. We're taking my business on the road, we're going to be homeschooling our daughter, we're going to have the best time, we're going to really embrace slow travel and just that freedom and adventure as a family. Number two, after the gap year, we want to settle down on a farm slash homestead slash small holding, depending where you are on the world and what kind of vernacular you use for that. For us, this has something for each of us as a family. For my daughter, it is her opportunity to live out all of her horseiest, most equestrian dreams. Yes, we will be buying her horses and very much looking forward to that. No, we've never done anything like it before. For my husband, it's his opportunity to live out his self-sufficiency, off-grid lifestyle thing that he's really into. And for me, it's an opportunity for me to live my most homesteadery dreams and have a flock of chickens and grow vegetables and perfect my sourdough recipe and have a dairy cow and make butter and generally flounce around in an apron. So this is what we're attempting to do over the course of the next year, and it's very exciting, but as you know from previous videos, also quite messy and a little bit stressful. We're hoping to buy our dream home farm before we actually set off on our gap year, which is only in a few short months. The reason being that for us, it would be ideal to know exactly where we're going to be putting down roots. We will spend a couple of portions of the gap year there in Ireland on the farm, making friends, making connections, finding out things about schools. And also it would just be really convenient because it would mean that when the lease expires on this rented house that we have right now, that we don't have to put all of our stuff in storage. We can just move it straight to the farm and have somewhere for it to go. Back to the roller coaster ride. I see this property and I'm like, is it too good to be true? It looked like it ticked not just all of our boxes. So we have a very specific list, things that are non-negotiables for us. Okay, I've got the list here. I'm going to read it to you. So our dream farm criteria: not too far from Dublin Airport, not too far north, not too far west, at least 10 acres of land, no runoff from other farms because we're going to be growing things organically. Don't want someone's pesticides running into our stuff. Preferably has outbuildings, barns, that kind of thing, and a great view. We don't want to feel penned in. It's part of the reason for moving to the countryside. But we also have a list of things that are our wildest dream wish list. It ticked every single box. Full equestrian facilities. Did I mention my daughter is obsessed with horses? So stables would be amazing. An actual outdoor arena, even better. Some kind of horse walker. Now you're talking. Many, many acres. So not just 10, many, many acres woodland. So if some of the land was woodland, that would make my tree hugging dreams all come true. Proximity to mountains. There's just something about mountains and a view of mountains to me. It's got a whole vibe. It's a thing. Beautiful Georgian architecture. We're a big fan of that era of architecture. Very pretty, often quite symmetrical in a pleasing way. Dutch gables. Now, you might be wondering, what the heck are Dutch gables? You can Google it. I couldn't find a decent enough royalty-free image to share with you, and I couldn't share the images from the actual property, but it's a very pretty kind of normally end, like a gable roof on a house. But for this one, there was a Dutch gable frontage, so it was really quite special. A true unicorn property. But it turns out that this place was for sale via an online auction. And we'd never bought a property on an auction before. And we've never bought anywhere in Ireland before, which is where we're looking to move to. So we found ourselves with a really short window of time between finding this property online and the actual set date of the auction, in which we had to figure everything out all at once. We had to find out, how does one go about getting registered for and participating in an online auction? We had to find out about Irish property system and laws and conveyancing and finding a solicitor over there because it's very different to over here. And at the same time, we had to book the flights, book an Airbnb, book the airport parking, the hire cars, so that we could go and see this place before the auction. Did I mention there was a really tight timeline? And we had to investigate things like making international funds transfers, because there was all sorts of admin hoops that we had to jump through, and we had to pay a really significant deposit up front to the bidding platform to be able to take part in the auction. It was a lot. Hoops jumped, deposit paid, solicitor engaged, flights booked, bags packed. Off we went. And the whole time, while we're figuring this out and on our way there, we were really trying, if I'm honest, to not get too emotionally attached to it, because with an auction, anything can happen. I mean, it's true, anything can happen when buying property anyway, but with an auction, there's just so many more unknowns. You don't know how it's gonna go on the day, who's gonna be there, who's gonna bid, what kind of budget do they have versus the budget that we have. So it was a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty, but it was really a unicorny place, and so it was really hard not to feel very emotionally invested in it. Before we'd even touched down, things had started to unravel. We were struggling to make an appointment to actually view this property. We found out some important information that made us understand that we were going to have to significantly rejig and relook at our budget, and that our ability to bid had been reduced a little bit. And we found out something about the property that could have been a deal breaker. And this was all before we actually even got there. So let me break it down. It turned out that the sale was actually a court order division of assets. So the people who owned it were getting a divorce. And as it turned out, the agent was struggling to make bookings for anybody. Tensions were running really high at the property, and they were not easy for him to deal with. And so when we got on the plane to go there, we didn't even know if we were going to have an opportunity to see this place. The second thing that started unraveling was, like I said, the budget. So we are complete newbies to the Irish property buying system, and we didn't know that land commands a different and significantly higher sales or purchase tax than a dwelling. Now, this place came with acres, many acres. So that had significantly changed how much we were going to have to put to one side for purchase fees. In addition to that, we found out that the conveyancing process, so that's the legal process around the purchase of property, I know it's got different names in different places, that it is significantly more expensive than we're used to in the UK. We had just sold a property, we've bought properties before, so we had a ballpark of what we thought we should expect, and it was about 5 times that. So these things obviously meant that we needed to re-examine our budget. And then the final thing, the potential deal breaker, was that we found out that the property was next to a very large pig farm. So we were, as you can imagine, quite concerned that there's going to be smelly, potentially noisy, and it might just be so unpleasant, depending on its proximity and various other factors, that it could take it from being a dream unicorn property to some kind of living hell. So, despite all this, we decided, you know what? Things like this don't come along very often. We're gonna take a punt. We're gonna have a go and at least explore this and see what happens. And anyway, we'd already booked the flights and the Airbnbs. We decided, now, many people will call us crazy for this, we decided we would buy it unseen. That's right, unseen, without having stepped foot in the property if we had to. Our experience with properties is that we have undertaken a really massive structural renovation on our previous property and extensive renovations, and my husband will handle like 95% of that himself. And there isn't really a lot with a property that could put us off from buying it in that respect. So we decided, even though there were really only a few photos of the place online, it was special enough that we would bid on it even if we couldn't manage to see inside. Oh, getting pins and needles in my leg. We took a look at our finances, moved some things around and rejigged our budget so that the maximum bid was reduced, but it wasn't reduced so much. So we kind of like added a bit of an extra, a buffer in there so that we felt that we had at least a shot of potentially winning this place at auction. And then when we got there, we decided, well, we will just drive as close as we can without trespassing to suss the place out. When we did get there and we realized that we just weren't going to get a viewing, nobody was having viewings, we did exactly that. We drove up to the property. Now, because it's on private land, we couldn't get very close to it at all. We could kind of just barely see it through some trees because it's quite secluded, but we did get to check out the pig farm. So we got out, had a sniff of the air, super scientific test, and the operation was in full swing that day, so it was quite a good opportunity to see how that was playing out, noise, smell levels, that kind of thing. And ultimately, it didn't actually seem like as big a deal as it could have been. And so we thought, well, we're still on track, let's still proceed. But then because we didn't have the viewing, we were there in Ireland with several days kind of to burn until the actual date of the auction, which was on the last day of the trip that we'd booked. So we were just kind of trying not to get our hopes up, trying not to get nervous about this impending auction. So we filled our time going and doing some sightseeing and enjoying soaking up the local cafes and bookshops and things in the area near that we're looking to buy, which is just always lovely. We just love being there and starting to get to know the place even more every time that we go. So we made the most of the time, and we also half-heartedly viewed a couple of extra properties while we were there. Sidebar, these two properties that we went to look at, one of them was in the most stunning location, absolutely beautiful views, but not near enough to anything else. So we want to be rural, but this one was kind of isolated feeling. So that one was off the list. The other one was even more derelict than we will tackle. Even us being pretty, I'd say, brave on that front. We got there and we hadn't realized, so we will look at a derelict property because we're happy with just taking something that's a shell and making it our own. But when we got there, we found out that the whole second floor of the property had collapsed inside. So you couldn't even open the front door because the collapsed staircase was behind it. So all we could do was look at it from the outside, poke about the outbuildings and survey the land. It was a nice position, nice parcel of land. My daughter made friends with a horse in a nearby field, and it turns out that there's some young girls who own that horse, so I had quite a bit going for it. But the walls, when my husband gave them a closer look, you could tell that they were about to collapse. I think from the pressure of everything inside collapsing, it was pushing the walls out. So he said we'd essentially be buying some land and maybe a pile of rubble, because by the time the sale goes through, these might not be standing anymore. So a stretch too far even for us. And like I said, we were only kind of half-heartedly looking because this other place was so damn special. I wish I could put a photo up here of it and you would be like, oh my God, okay, I get it. You'll just have to imagine somewhere very beautiful with Georgian architecture and a Dutch gable frontage rather than end on it, so it was very unique, just very pretty. So back to the roller coaster. We'd put in enough time that it was finally the day for the auction. Now, how the auction worked is there was a 2-hour window in which bidding can take place. And at the end, if somebody bid in the last 2 minutes, an extra 2 minutes of extension time would be added on. So our tactic was going to be just a classic old school eBay approach of wait till the last minute and then throw what we've got at it. So it got to the 2-hour window finally. And I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the most tense days and tense 2-hour periods of my life. I felt queasy. I felt like I had all this nervous, excited energy. My daughter and I were just bouncing off the walls, so much so that my husband was like, right, that's it. Let's get out of here. You two are doing my head in. And we went for a walk to go and see the little lambs that had just been born quite recently near where we were staying, and get some fresh air and try to distract ourselves from the impending timeline, because otherwise all we were doing was sitting in our Airbnb and hitting refresh on the computer, and nobody had bid. Now, you can't see how many people are even participating in the auction, so we had no idea. So this whole 2 hours was just ticking down, no idea of who's watching. Is it just us? Is this just going to be really easy? Are there 10 people? Are there 100 people watching? How much budget do they have? You know, these are all the thoughts that were swirling around in our minds. So there we were, 60 seconds left on the auction window. Nobody had bid. It was all up for grabs. And we typed in our opening amount, hit enter, and it said, you are the highest bidder. And we were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then because we'd entered it in the last 60 seconds, there was this 2 minutes of extra time. And we were just watching this time going down, and I felt like I was going to be sick. And the timer is going down, and then we were outbid. So there was another bidder, we don't know who, it's just got a bidder ID, and they'd outbid us. So we took a deep breath, we had just a 2-minute window, we put in our next bid. We were the highest bidder, we waited, we were outbid again. We put in another bid near to our top maximum budget that we had agreed on, we couldn't go beyond. We were outbid. We decided, okay, this place is special, let's just stretch beyond what we'd even said we were gonna do. We put in another bid, and they outbid us again. So my husband and I looked at each other and we had a very quick conversation, because it's a two-minute window of time. And we said, okay, we've already stretched beyond what we'd agreed. Let's go one further. And if that doesn't win it, it's clearly not for us. These people could have really deep pockets and be prepared to be here all afternoon in extra time, outbidding us until they get it. So we have to draw the line somewhere. Let's just go one further, which is 2 levels above what we'd agreed was our maximum. Classic auction bidding behavior, right? Set a maximum and then just go beyond it. We thought, well, then we'll feel like we really have done our best here to secure it. So we put in our final bid, hit enter, and watched the time tick down nervously, thinking maybe this is it, maybe we've secured it. And they outbid us. It wasn't ours. And the auction ended and the other people won. It was only one bidder in that whole time, so we don't know how many people had been interested, but it was just one person and us, and ultimately they were willing to pay more than we were for it. So it could have been really easy to just descend into pity, self-pity and disappointment, and we were really disappointed. We were crushed in that moment. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. However, we didn't actually have time to wallow, because we had to immediately bundle in the car and drive to our solicitor or lawyer or conveyancer, depending where you are in the house, because he and his wife had invited us round for lunch. I don't know about you, but this isn't standard at all here in the UK. People are not that hospitable, particularly just people who you're working with in this way, but they are the nicest people, and they'd invited us around for lunch. And so we had to be around people, be a pleasant company. We couldn't be all depressed and in the doldrums. So That was actually a really surprising afternoon. This is the first time we'd ever met them, and they'd invited us around. We spent hours around there talking about houses and homes, and their home was absolutely beautiful, and they laid on the most wonderful lunch spread for us, and we felt like we'd made new friends, and we felt very welcomed into the country. And also they live in the county that we're really looking to buy in, and it was actually a really like warm and cozy and lovely afternoon, and so a really remarkable overall and memorable day, because we'd gone from this really tense period to then just this lovely kind of like warm hug of an afternoon. And we actually learnt a ton from them, because they've both been in legal practice for many decades, and obviously have lived there for most of their lives in both cases, so they know a lot of stuff. So it was a really, really like wonderful but also useful afternoon. So we came away from the trip having learned a lot. We didn't succeed in getting the dream unicorn, but the weirdest thing happened the next day for me is I woke up expecting for it to kind of really sink in and to feel bitterly disappointed. And actually, I just had this feeling of calm wash over me, and like a calm excitement though, because I feel like, yes, that one wasn't ours. And I know it's going to sound cheesy, but I do genuinely believe that things happen for a reason. So it wasn't meant to be, clearly, for us. And this kind of calm and excitement just came from this knowing that there's somewhere out there exciting for us, and we still get to find out where it is and everything about it. So it could have ended on a bad note, but actually I feel like we learned so much from that trip. We got to know the area better, we learned so much from this lovely couple, and we now have experience of trying to buy a property at an auction. So there was so much on this roller coaster ride that actually still moved us forward towards the dream, that we feel very much like the dream is still on. It's still happening. So it felt like, even though, yes, it was heart-wrenching, it was a really important next step on this path towards the next level dream life that we're looking to live. We're still very committed to the dream, very determined to just see how this plays out as a family. Saying yes to pursuing whatever is your dream means that you say yes to uncertainty and you have to embrace the unknown. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to enjoy the unfolding of all of this as it happens. And sometimes there's twists and turns, sometimes there's ups and downs, but that's part of it, right? Yes, it's uncomfortable at times, but you know what they say, there's no magic happening in your comfort zone. So, what's next for us? Next, having diverted our attention to trying to buy our dream farm, we have taken our attention a little bit off of our preparations for our family gap year. So that is what's next for us. We're going to be immersing ourselves in all of the preparations. I need to finish getting my business ready to take it on the road. I need to look into homeschooling our daughter and finalize our plans on that front. We need to minimize our possessions so that we can actually live largely out of a van for an entire year. I could go on. There's a lot to figure out, organize, prepare, and time is the ticking. So I'm going to be bringing you behind the scenes as we prepare for a whole year of travel, digital nomad style as a family. See you next time.